The office was unusually quiet that Thursday afternoon. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, bouncing off the polished floors and reflecting softly on the stacks of files that lined the walls. Michael sat at his desk, his fingers moving across the keyboard in a mechanical rhythm. Reports, spreadsheets, emails, everything demanded his attention. Yet his mind kept wandering. He couldn't ignore the small flicker of movement across the office. It was Anna. She had started only a few weeks ago. A bright new marketing associate with a calm presence and an attention to detail that immediately stood out. Today, she was arranging papers on a nearby desk, methodical and focused. Yet Michael noticed something he hadn't before. She kept glancing in his direction. Not casually, not as part of normal office awareness, but with a certain hesitation, a subtle awareness that he noticed instantly. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, and in that instant, Michael felt an unexpected tension. Her eyes were curious, soft, yet something else lingered behind them, a hint of vulnerability, a spark he could not name. She gave him a polite, almost shy smile before turning back to her work, pretending to be entirely absorbed in organizing files. But the fleeting glance lingered in his mind longer than it should have, leaving a strange warmth in his chest and a tension he couldn't quite shake. He shook his head lightly, trying to focus on his reports. This was the office. Boundaries existed for a reason. Michael was experienced, respected, and careful about maintaining professionalism. And yet something about her presence made him acutely aware of every movement, every small gesture. It wasn't a simple attraction. He realized it was the magnetic pull of curiosity, of emotional awareness, of noticing someone in a way that made his carefully structured day feel slightly unpredictable. Over the next few days, Michael found himself noticing more than just Anna's presence. He observed the way she tapped her pen absent-mindedly when thinking, the soft laughter she shared quietly with colleagues, the subtle hesitations in her steps when she approached his desk with questions. Each small detail became a point of focus, a thread weaving a connection neither of them had verbalized. He reminded himself constantly that this was dangerous territory. He was her senior. She was young, intelligent, and had an entire career ahead of her. And yet the simple fact of noticing her, of being aware of her, brought a sense of life back into him that he hadn't felt in years. He had dedicated himself to work, to structure, to routines. But this was something else entirely. Anna herself was not unaware of the tension. She, too, noticed Michael, and not just because he was her boss. There was a warmth in the way he approached his work, a thoughtfulness in the way he interacted with the team, a quiet authority that didn't intimidate but inspired. She caught herself glancing at him across meetings, at lunch, at her desk when he walked past. Her heart would quicken for reasons she couldn't fully explain. And each glance held a mix of curiosity and unspoken questions. On Friday afternoon, the office was nearly empty. Most of the team had gone to an early gathering, leaving Michael to finish reports and Anna to tidy her workspace. It was quiet enough that even the soft hum of the air conditioning seemed loud in contrast to the silence. Anna approached his desk with a small question about a report. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said softly, almost hesitantly. "I wanted to clarify something about the campaign numbers." Michael looked up, forcing a professional tone, though his chest tightened unexpectedly. "Of course. What do you need?" They bent over the spreadsheet together, shoulders nearly brushing. Each movement was careful, subtle, but there was an awareness, unspoken, electric, fragile. Neither spoke more than necessary, but the air between them grew heavier with every second. A sudden laugh from somewhere else in the office startled them, breaking the tension. They both looked up at each other and, for a heartbeat, felt as if the world had shrunk to the distance between their desks. Then Anna smiled lightly, stepping back. "I'll figure it out," she said, though the softness of her voice carried a hint of uncertainty, almost as if she sought reassurance without asking directly. Michael nodded, forcing a professional smile, though inside he felt an unusual warmth and curiosity that he couldn't ignore. That weekend, he found himself thinking about her more than he cared to admit. Her presence lingered in his mind like a soft echo. the weight of her unspoken glance pressing gently against the edges of his thoughts. He reminded himself constantly. She was a colleague, he was her senior, and boundaries existed for a reason. And yet, that simple connection, the recognition of one another across the office, felt profound, unexpected, and impossible to dismiss. The following Monday, the routine continued. Michael noticed the small way she interacted with others, the slight pauses before she spoke, the way her eyes searched the room occasionally, only to find his. Every glance, every interaction was subtle, professional, yet it carried a weight that neither could articulate, and each moment left both of them quietly aware of a growing tension, the kind that was emotional, intimate in a human sense, but still unspoken, still unacted upon. One afternoon, Michael was reviewing reports at his desk when Anna approached again, this time with a printed presentation for an upcoming campaign. As she placed the documents on his desk, their fingers brushed lightly. Neither spoke immediately, both aware of the unspoken electricity in that brief contact. Michael looked at her and saw the slight hesitation, the quiet acknowledgement in her eyes. He understood in that moment that she felt it too, the mutual recognition of something delicate, something forbidden in the professional context, yet undeniably present. "I appreciate your help," he said carefully, maintaining the proper tone. Though his voice carried a softness that mirrored the unspoken connection, Anna nodded. A faint blush on her cheeks, her voice low. "I'm happy to help. You've been supportive. It means a lot." They both returned to their respective tasks, yet the atmosphere had shifted slightly. There was an awareness between them now, a mutual understanding of a subtle bond forming. It wasn't overt, it wasn't romantic in a traditional sense, but it was there, a human connection, charged, delicate, and entirely emotional by the end of the day. Michael found himself staring out the office window, reflecting on the week. He realized that this connection, this recognition of one another, had made his days feel fuller, his work feel more meaningful, and his life feel slightly more vibrant. It was a new awareness, one he couldn't entirely explain, one he hadn't felt in years. Anna, too, left her desk later than usual, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and apprehension. She had never felt this way toward a colleague before. It wasn't inappropriate desire. It was the sensation of being truly seen and acknowledged by someone she respected and admired. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of anticipation for work, not the tasks themselves, but the human interactions, the subtle connection, the unspoken understanding of a shared presence. As she walked out of the office, she glanced back at Michael's desk. He looked up from his reports for a fleeting second and met her eyes. That single, silent exchange carried the weight of weeks of observation, emotion, and subtle longing. Neither spoke, neither acted, but both understood. Something was forming. Delicate, profound, and entirely unspoken. That night, both Michael and Anna lay in their separate homes thinking of the office. Thinking of the glances, the brushes of hands, the quiet acknowledgement of mutual awareness. It was emotional, it was confusing, it was thrilling, and it was only the beginning for Michael. It was a reminder that human connection could exist in quiet ways, in unspoken gestures, in fleeting interactions that carried more meaning than words. For Anna, it was the realization that admiration, respect, and subtle attraction could intertwine, creating a profound emotional resonance even in a professional setting. By the time the week ended, the tension had become almost tangible. Michael returned to his desk Monday morning with a sense of anticipation he hadn't experienced in years. Anna approached with her usual calm, but there was a glimmer in her eyes, a quiet acknowledgement that neither of them could ignore. It was the start of something unspoken, a delicate connection, emotional and profound, forming silently amidst reports, spreadsheets, and office routines. And while the rules remained clear, the boundaries intact, the human heart had begun to notice. The air between them was charged with something forbidden, yet completely safe, and emotional intimacy, a spark of human understanding that neither could yet define, but both could feel. The next morning, Michael arrived at the office earlier than usual, carrying his usual stack of reports. The quiet hum of the building greeted him as he settled at his desk, aware that Anna would arrive soon. He couldn't deny the flutter in his chest as he thought about the previous evening, the lingering smiles, the subtle touches, the way their connection had deepened without a single word being said explicitly. It was exhilarating yet carefully restrained. When Anna walked in, her presence immediately filled the room. She moved with her usual calm, professional grace. But there was a noticeable sparkle in her eyes, a quiet anticipation that Michael recognized instantly. The energy between them was electric, charged yet delicate, like a thread stretched taut, but not yet broken. He felt it in the brush of her fingers as she handed him a folder, in the way her gaze met his across the room, and in the subtle tilt of her head as she spoke. Today, they had to prepare a major presentation together. The client was expecting detailed insights, and their coordination had to be seamless. As they worked side by side, every small movement, every glance, every laugh carried the weight of the connection they had been nurturing for weeks. There was tension, yes, but it was the kind of tension that energized rather than distracted. Michael noticed Anna's attention to detail, the care with which she handled charts and documents. And yet, beneath the professional exterior, there was an awareness, a shared recognition that neither could fully articulate at one point. As Michael leaned over the desk to adjust a chart, their hands brushed lightly. The contact was brief, almost accidental, but it sent a small jolt through both of them. They looked up at each other, eyes locking, and for a moment, the world outside the office ceased to exist. No words were needed. The connection was silent but undeniable. It was the culmination of weeks of shared moments, subtle gestures. An unspoken understanding. Anna broke the silence first. Michael, can I be honest? Her voice was low, steady, but carried a vulnerability he had come to recognize and cherish. Always, he replied, meeting her gaze without hesitation. I've been feeling something. Something I can't ignore, she admitted. Her words were carefully measured, professional, yet deeply personal. It's not about work, and it's not inappropriate to feel. But I can't pretend it's not there. Michael's heart tightened. He had felt the same for weeks, the emotional pull that neither of them acted on, yet could not deny. I feel it too, he said softly. I've tried to keep it in check, but it's impossible to ignore when it's this real. They returned to their work, but the dynamic had shifted. Every task, every chart, every discussion carried an undercurrent of emotional intimacy. Their proximity was professional, but the emotional closeness made the room feel smaller, more intense, more private. They moved with unspoken coordination, understanding each other's rhythms, finishing each other's sentences, anticipating the next step without needing instructions later. As they reviewed the final slides for the client presentation, Michael noticed Anna's eyes lingering on him again. It was not a casual glance, but a deliberate, searching look that spoke volumes. He met her gaze, and in that silent exchange, the depth of their connection was unmistakable. Anna then reached for the corner of the folder he was holding, her fingers brushing his deliberately this time. The contact was fleeting, but it was loaded with unspoken meaning, acknowledgement, trust, and a shared emotional vulnerability. After the slides were ready, they leaned back in their chairs, taking a brief moment of respite. The office was quiet, the hum of the fluorescent lights above providing a soft soundtrack. Michael realized that this connection, this delicate emotional thread between them, had become the most significant part of his day. It was not about attraction alone. It was about understanding, recognition, and a profound bond that neither had expected to find in an office environment. Anna spoke again, her voice low but confident. Michael, I've never felt this way about a colleague before. It's strange, but it feels right? He nodded, understanding completely. It does feel right, he admitted, even if we can't act on it recklessly, even if it has to remain unspoken in public. It doesn't make it any less real. Their eyes met, and for a long moment they simply acknowledged each other. There was no rush, no impulsive decision, no crossing of boundaries, just recognition. It was a mutual understanding that feelings existed, that they were valid, and that they could coexist with the professionalism their workplace demanded. As the day went on, they moved through tasks with ease, but every interaction carried the subtle weight of their emotional connection. When Michael spoke, Anna listened with attention that went beyond simple professionalism. When Anna presented data, Michael's feedback was more careful, more considerate, and infused with a quiet admiration he had not needed to hide before. They had reached a stage where emotions and professionalism coexisted harmoniously, creating a rhythm that was both efficient and deeply personal. In the late afternoon, after the client had approved the presentation, the office was nearly empty. Michael and Anna stayed behind to organize materials and finalize reports. The atmosphere was calm, almost serene, yet charged with the quiet intensity that had developed over the past weeks. Anna approached him with a stack of papers, and as she handed them over, their fingers touched again. This time the gesture was deliberate but restrained, a silent acknowledgement of the trust and emotional intimacy they shared. "Michael," Anna began, her voice soft but steady, "I don't know where this will lead. I don't know if we can ever act on it openly. But I needed you to know that I care, more than I can explain." Michael felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of relief, warmth, and connection. "I care too," he said quietly, "and I think it's okay to feel this way, even if we have to navigate it carefully." They spent a few more moments organizing papers, sharing small smiles, exchanging glances that spoke volumes without words. There was no haste, no impulsive movement, only the quiet, steady presence of someone who truly understood and acknowledged them. It was emotional intimacy in its purest form, subtle, profound, and entirely safe within the boundaries they had set by the time they left the office together. The evening sky was painted with hues of gold and pink. Their conversation was light, almost playful, yet every word carried the weight of their shared understanding. As they reached the building entrance, they paused, neither wanting to break the fragile emotional bond that had grown so naturally. Michael smiled gently. "See you tomorrow?" he asked, his tone warm, professional, but laced with personal sincerity. Anna nodded, her eyes reflecting the same warmth. "Tomorrow," she replied, as they parted. Both walked to their cars with a quiet awareness that this connection, this delicate, emotional, romantic bond was unlike anything they had experienced before. It was not about physical attraction alone. It was about recognition, understanding, and the courage to feel deeply while maintaining respect and professionalism. Over the following weeks, this pattern continued. Small gestures, shared laughter, meaningful glances, all the subtleties of emotional intimacy became part of their daily routine. They had discovered a way to balance feelings with responsibilities, creating a safe space for the heart to recognize what the mind could not fully act upon. By the end of part 3, Michael and Anna understood that their story was not defined by overt actions, but by the quiet acknowledgement of feelings. The forbidden was not acted upon recklessly. It existed in the recognition of emotional truth, in the shared moments of vulnerability, and in the courage to feel deeply in a professional world. They had found a rare, meaningful connection, one built on trust, respect, and emotional honesty. Theirs was a story of subtle romance, quiet longing, and restrained emotional passion. A story of two hearts recognizing each other in a place where rules demanded distance. Yet human emotion demanded acknowledgement. It was unforgettable, transformative, and entirely safe for the world outside the office to hear a story of love, connection, and the beauty of unspoken understanding. Michael stared at the note on his desk for a long moment, his fingers trembling slightly as he unfolded it. "Meet me in the lounge after everyone leaves. I need to talk." The handwriting was unmistakably Anna's, neat, careful, and deliberate. His mind raced, but not with fear or suspicion. Instead, it was a whirlwind of curiosity, caution, and something deeper he hadn't fully acknowledged until now. He knew the office rules, knew the boundaries, knew the risk of any inappropriate action. And yet the simple request carried a weight he could not ignore by the time the evening rolled around. The office was nearly empty. Michael lingered at his desk, pretending to finish reports, but his thoughts kept drifting toward the lounge. The hum of the air conditioning, the faint glow of the overhead lights. Even the creak of the office chairs seemed louder than usual. And then he saw her. Anna appeared at the entrance of the lounge, her posture slightly hesitant, yet determined. Her eyes met his immediately, calm yet carrying a flicker of emotion that he recognized instantly. "I'm glad you came," she said softly as he approached. Her voice was gentle, but it carried an unmistakable sincerity. "I wasn't sure if I should leave the note, but I felt like I needed to speak." Michael nodded, careful to maintain a professional distance, though he couldn't deny the pull of curiosity and connection. "You didn't have to," he said, though his tone was softer than he intended. "I'm here." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room was quiet, empty, and charged with an energy that was entirely unspoken. Michael noticed the way Anna's fingers fidgeted slightly, how her shoulders relaxed when he stood near, and how her eyes lingered on him just a second longer than necessary. There was a vulnerability there, yes, but also a quiet courage that made his chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt in years. "I feel like we shouldn't be feeling this," Anna said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't deny it either. Every time I see you, I feel something. Something I can't ignore." Michael swallowed, his throat dry. He had felt the same way. The tension, the awareness, the magnetic pull that neither of them could explain. And yet, the situation was delicate. They were colleagues, bound by professionalism, and every instinct screamed caution. "I feel the same," he admitted. "But we have to be careful." She nodded, her gaze dropping momentarily before returning to meet his. "I know, but it doesn't make it any easier," she said. There was a pause, and the silence between them carried a weight neither expected. It was a moment of recognition, not action, an acknowledgement that the human heart did not always follow the rules of workplace conduct. Over the next few weeks, their connection deepened, but subtly. Every glance across a meeting, every small gesture of concern, every shared laugh over coffee or during breaks carried an undercurrent of understanding. They had not crossed any boundaries, not acted on any impulses, yet the emotional intimacy was undeniable. Each interaction left both of them aware of the delicate balance they were maintaining. A professional decorum intertwined with an unspoken recognition of mutual attraction and admiration. One evening, the office was nearly deserted after a particularly long day. Michael was finishing up a report when Anna appeared at his doorway, holding a stack of files. She hesitated before speaking, as if weighing her words carefully. "I wanted to tell you," she said softly, "that you're important to me, and I don't know what to do about it." Michael's chest tightened. The honesty in her voice, the vulnerability in her stance resonated deeply with him. He realized that denying his own feelings would be as dishonest as ignoring the delicate, emotional bond that had grown between them. "I don't have the answers," he admitted, "but I know I can't ignore how I feel either." There was a long pause as they simply stood there, side by side, acknowledging the connection without crossing any lines. The air was charged with something profound, the recognition of emotional intimacy, the magnetic pull of shared feelings, and the unspoken agreement that they would proceed cautiously. In the following days, this balance became their new normal. They navigated the office with subtle gestures, shared smiles across meetings, brief moments of eye contact that lasted slightly longer than usual. Careful words exchanged over documents or presentations. It was as though a quiet understanding had settled between them, one that respected boundaries, yet acknowledged the undeniable tension of human connection. Then came the day of the big client presentation. Both Michael and Anna were required to work closely together, preparing slides, reviewing reports, and rehearsing the key points. The tension was palpable. Every brush of hands while passing documents, every shared glance as they discussed details, carried a quiet intensity. Neither spoke of it directly, yet both were acutely aware of the emotions running beneath the surface. During a brief pause, Michael noticed Anna watching him more intently than usual. Her gaze lingered, searching, and he felt that familiar pull in his chest. She leaned slightly toward him while handing over a report, and their fingers brushed lightly. It was a fleeting contact, almost accidental, yet both felt the electric current of awareness. Michael realized that the forbidden they were navigating wasn't an action, but the acknowledgement of deep, unspoken feelings later. As they finished preparing, Anna spoke again, her voice low and deliberate. "I don't want to regret not saying this," she admitted. Michael met her gaze, understanding immediately. "I don't either," he said, his voice steady yet warm. She hesitated for a moment, then continued, "I like you. More than I should. But I can't leave it unsaid." Michael felt the weight of her words, and he realized he shared the same feelings, admiration, connection, and a longing that went beyond the professional environment. But unlike a reckless impulse, this was controlled, respectful, and emotional. They acknowledged their bond without crossing boundaries, creating a space where both could express feelings safely. They worked side by side for the remainder of the evening, organizing documents, finalizing presentations, and sharing quiet smiles. Each interaction, while seemingly ordinary, carried the subtle charge of emotional recognition. They had discovered something rare, a connection that was deep, genuine and romantic in the purest sense, yet carefully constrained by respect and professionalism. By the time the office emptied completely, Michael and Anna left together for the elevator, their conversation light yet meaningful. There was a quiet understanding in the way they walked, a shared energy that neither could ignore. Outside, the night was calm, the city lights reflecting softly on the glass windows of the building. They parted at the entrance with a gentle acknowledgement of the bond that had formed, neither hurried nor forced, simply recognized. That night, Michael reflected on the events with a sense of wonder. It was rare to encounter someone who could stir such feelings without any overt action. Someone whose presence alone could bring a sense of vitality and anticipation. Anna, too, replayed the interactions in her mind, feeling a mix of excitement, caution, and profound emotional connection. Over the following days, they continued to navigate their professional relationship with care. Each glance, each shared task, each subtle smile became a thread in the growing tapestry of their connection. They had found a way to honor their feelings while respecting boundaries, creating a space where emotions could exist without disrupting the professional environment. By the end of part 2, both Michael and Anna understood that their story was not about impulsive action or inappropriate behavior. It was about emotional honesty, mutual recognition, and the courage to feel deeply, even in a constrained environment. They had discovered a rare form of intimacy, one that existed in glances, gestures, and shared moments, a connection that would shape their interactions for weeks to come.